Okay folks, welcome back to the channel as we continue on with the T-55 build from Tamiya. So before we get going, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, and please leave a comment on the video. Do you like what we're doing? Do you not? Any reasons why? Anything you would do differently? Blah blah blah. So yeah, let us know. The interaction is always good. So in the last video we got this thing painted, we got the base coat on, it was still quite shiny, and now we're moving on to weathering essentially. So I have sort of made a start. So I said in the last video what we wanted to do, particularly along this side, is create some damage, some denting to the fuel tanks. Now we don't want to go so far that we breach the integrity of the fuel tank, because obviously they've got fuel in them, but we want to show that this thing has been used. So as you can see there, we've got some damage in each corner of that fuel tank at the front. We're starting to create some dirt and all that stuff on the fuel tanks. Now the issue is that the vehicle that I'm doing and the vehicle I want to depict is on urban operations in Mogadishu. So we're not going to get loads of heavy mud and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be sort of damage and also sort of dust and grime rather than actual sort of heavy mud and all that sort of stuff. So the way I did this fuel tank at the front here is very, very simple. So what you're going to need is some sort of metal implement. So this is a Tamiya paint stirrer, which is ideal for this, but you could use things like an old airbrush needle, some brush rod, anything really that kind of is metal and will hold heat. We've also got here a tea light. So light your tea light. Now obviously be careful, this is fire. And we're going to work on this fuel tank at the rear. So what we want to do is we want to put a dent and some damage around this central bit here, right on the corner. So move that in so you can see it. So what we're going to do is heat up our paint stirrer like so. Now less is more with this, so start off quite gently. You've got obviously the sharp edge of the paint stirrer and the flat edge there. And what we want to do is we want to actually melt or press this metal into the actual plastic. Like so. Now if you need to turn that so that you can get it on the edge, that's absolutely fine. We can do that. And we just start to gradually damage the plastic like so. Now obviously at the moment it will go really black, because as you heat up this paint stirrer or anything metal really, you're gonna have some residue of the plastic on it, but we'll clean that up. I'll show you how we clean that up. So you don't want to make a hole, or if you do want to make a hole, this is a good way of doing stripe marks and that sort of stuff, but we don't want to go that far. We don't want to make a hole. We're essentially just doing some damage, denting and that sort of stuff. So just take your time like so, and eventually, as you can see now, because we're getting sort of this plastic residue hanging off, it will cut that off, that's not a problem. But as you can see, we're going through the paint now and down to the sort of original plastic color, which is this sort of dark green color. So we know we're where we want to be, and we as I say, we want to be quite gentle with it, because we don't want to make a hole, because obviously if this had a hole in it, all the fuel's going to leak out. So we're just trying to create a bit of denting. There we go, like so. blow your candle out first. That's the first thing. A good tip, if you're using anything metallic, whether that be some brush rod, a paint stirrer, an airbrush needle, whatever, wrap some masking tape around it so you hold it, because obviously metal conducts the heat, and that will pass into your fingers. So then take a sharp blade, and where we've got this kind of excess plastic from the melting process, we just kind of shave that off, really, like so. It doesn't matter if we damage the paint around it, it's all going to add to the effect that we're after. So just get it nice and smooth, like so. Now obviously, if this vehicle had been damaged and it had been in theatre and remained operational, where we've got damage, we would have kind of rust forming on the surface, etc. So you can see on the front there, we're trying to sort of recreate that, really. So the way we're going to do that is just take an old cheap brush. Flathead is best, really. I'm going to use, the first colour I'm going to use is Citadel Rhinox Hide, which is like a very dark brown, reddy colour, as you can see. A little bit on your brush, take some kitchen paper and just remove the excess paint. You don't want your brush overloaded with paint. And then where we've got that damaged bit, we're just gonna almost stipple the Rhinox hide into it, like so. There we go. And that will do us. So we'll let that dry. It won't take long because there's not loads and loads of paint on there at all. So we'll let that dry, clean our brush, and then I'll show you how I created the sort of worn effects on the edges, which is really, really simple. Really simple. So if I get my little cardboard palette, and what we'll do, we'll work around this front mud guard here. So I take the brush, very, very simple. Same again, sort of flat-headed brush. Make sure it's dry. And then we're going to use Vallejo German Grey, or the Hey-Ho, or whatever. And we're essentially, it's almost, I guess it's a bit like an edge highlight, but dark, if that is kind of, yeah, kind of the opposite. So we'll get some on the brush, and then just as we would do with a normal dry brush, take the majority of that paint off our brush on the cardboard, like so. And then we take the model, and then what we're going to do is we're going to work along this edge here. So we're literally, the reason we use a flathead brush is so it makes life much easier for us, and it's as simple as that. So you can see there that it's kind of giving the impression that we've worn through this paint. And then if we go on the other side, we can do exactly the same. You can go as heavy or as light as you want, really. Weathering white is incredibly difficult, and we want this vehicle to look quite bashed, quite dirty, damaged. And so yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit heavier around the corners, and then you go a bit lighter as you move it back. And that's essentially how we're going to achieve that. So around this corner at the front here, we'll go a little bit heavier, moving the brush upwards away from the bottom of the vehicle, like so. And then we just kind of feather that effect the further up the mudguard and fender that we go. And it really is as simple as that, folks. There's no dark art to this at all. And there we go. We've got that effect. It's really, really straightforward. Now, while we've been doing that, this Rhinox hide at the back will be dry enough on the fuel tank for us to kind of achieve what we want to achieve. So again, we get some German grey, and we're going to use exactly the same technique in this dry brushing technique. And we're just going to go around the edges like so, but this time we're going into where we put that Rhinox hide as well, and kind of feather it out as best we can. And hopefully what that's going to give us is this real dirty, scratched, damaged appearance, which is exactly what we're after. So there we go. It's as simple as that. There's no oil paints involved in this. This is purely acrylic, purely dry brushing. Now, what you will notice at the back here is this bit is white currently. That eventually is going to be a very dark grey because they're rubberized mud flaps bolted on to the fender here by this bit, but we'll do that last really, before we start adding some dust effects and all that sort of stuff. Now, it's not going to be massively dirty, as I said, because of the environment it's working in. It's going to be more dusty, scratched and all that sort of stuff. So we've managed to put the first layer on the side there, and we've done that in exactly the same way, using the German grey and almost scrubbing it onto. A lot of this is going to be hidden, but we know it's there, don't we? So that's what we're doing. So yeah, that's essentially it really. That's the first layer of weathering, is using this German dark grey. When I come onto this side, what we're going to do is we're going to bend this, and we're going to misshape it, and we're going to use a heat gun and some pliers to do that. So I'll come back and show you how I'm going to do that, but for now I'm going to go around the rest of the vehicle with this German grey and just get this effect that you can see here over the vehicle. And that's our first layer of weathering really. So yeah, I like the appearance of it. It's kind of what I've got in my mind's eye, how I want it to look. And as we put more and more layers of weathering on, it will, yeah, it'll work. It'll give us the appearance we're after. So that's it for now. I'll be back in a few minutes once I've got the rest of the German grey bits on this. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, we've gone around the whole vehicle now with the German grey, smudging it, dry brushing it onto the edges and all that sort of stuff. And I think it's definitely a good basis now for the rest of the weathering. We've gone a little bit heavier around the engine deck because that's where a lot of the grime and stuff will accumulate. But no dust effects or anything on this yet. So the next thing that we need to do, or that I want to try and do, whether it works or not, which is going to be a bit of a disaster if it doesn't, because obviously we're at this stage with the build now, and if this doesn't work or work how I want it to, then it's ruined really. So it's an experiment. So what I want to do is around this side fender here, where I've put that rust, or the initial stages of rust, is I want to actually bend this. I want to misshape it. Not massively, but just to give the idea that this is quite thin, and following some sort of collision or explosion or whatever, that it's essentially, it's bent and out of shape, but not enough to make the vehicle unserviceable. You know, it can still be used. So that's what I'm going to try and do. So the way I'm going to do it is I have one of these, which is one of the cheap heat guns, which I normally use for sort of decals and that sort of stuff, from Amazon. I didn't get these for about a tenner, but I'm going to try and heat up the plastic to such a level that it becomes malleable. It's going to be loud. This thing's quite loud. Just be very, very careful when you're doing this sort of stuff, because this does get very, very hot. So we're going to try and heat it up using the heat gun, and then what I'm going to try and do is bend it, essentially bend it out of shape. Now the way I'm going to do that, I think, as I say, I've never done this before, so it's all a bit of test and adjust, and you're seeing it as I'm doing it. I've not had a practice or anything like that, because once you do this to a kit, you've done it. There's no kind of going back. You're never going to get it back exactly straight. So I'm going to use my Tamiya P bending pliers, and the idea is that once I've heated this up, I can go in and kind of bend it and get it into some sort of misshape. So I'm going to turn the sound off while I do this, because this heat gun is very, very loud, and we'll see what happens. But if it doesn't go well, then essentially this is going to be the end of the build series, because yeah, we're up to this stage, and this is kind of a one-shot deal. So we're gonna have a go. We're gonna see what happens. So I am gonna try and hold the hole in that sort of position so you can see it, and then I am gonna just try and heat it up basically. Okay, folks, so I think I've done it, and that's kind of what I wanted. It's kind of gone solid again now as the plastic's cooled, but we've kind of bent it out of shape, and that was kind of what I wanted. So what I'm now going to do is this section here that's a bit lighter, where you can see the white coming through. I'm going to drill through that essentially, and make a hole, and then around this area here and underneath here is I'm going to use my normal technique of using UMP pigments to create a rust effect on this. There is a video on the channel, if you go back, and that will show in more depth how I do that, and how I create rust effects, etc., using the UMP pigments. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to come back and see what it looks like. But for the actual bending of the plastic, I'm quite happy with that. That's kind of worked the way I wanted it to. Very, very nervous about doing that, because as I say, once you get to this stage, or any sort of misshapen plastic or whatever, if it's not what you want, or it's not how the build, you know, you're never going to get it back to this side where it's perfectly straight. You're just not going to do it. So actually that's worked pretty well, and I'm pretty happy. We've managed to break this kind of area here, which is good. and kind of showing an impact of some sort here, going into there, and that's why I'm drilling the hole where it is, to kind of show that either from above with an RPG, or more likely to the side with an RPG that's then come through. Then yeah, that's kind of the look I'm going for. So we'll see. I'm going to drill this hole out, and then I'm going to do the rust, and then we're going to come back, and essentially start to add some dust effects to it and stuff. Obviously the turret's not on it. I'm not going to show me doing the turret. I'm doing it exactly the same as I'm doing the hole. So we'll show you on the hole, and then right at the end of the video, obviously I'll put the turret on it. But yeah, so far the damage is kind of going in the direction I want it to. So that's good. That's exactly what we wanted, really. So I'm going to go and do these rust bits and bobs, and I'll be back. Okay folks, so we've gone round and we've done all the sort of German grey and all that sort of stuff. Now those observant of you will notice that also we've now got this kind of dust colour on most of the hole here. So we can see on the fuel tanks here. So we've done that in pretty much exactly the same way, and I'm going to show you how I've done that. What we've also done is on the side here we've added some sort of dust colour to the bit that essentially is going to be covered by the road wheels, because we're not, as I said, we're not going for this heavy mud look. We're going for dusty urban environment type stuff. So we do that in exactly the same way pretty much as the German grey, but this time we're using another Citadel colour, which is Zandri dust. So that's very much like a dark sandy brown colour, and it's ideal for this sort of thing. So exactly the same way, we get a little bit on the brush, and then we're going to use, again, dry brushing techniques. Appreciate there's 101 ways to do this sort of thing, but this is my preferred method after years of trying to figure out what works for me. So again, we're just going over quite gently, because what we want to do is for that German grey to show through as well. So we don't want to cover the entire thing, and we can always add more if we need it, whereas taking it off is, well, it's impossible really. So again, we're just dry brushing around the edges and get this brown tone on. Now looking at the camera and looking at it with my eye, it looks a lot more vivid on the camera, whereas to the eye it's a little bit more subtle, but that's just the way the camera works, and you know, is what it is, unfortunately. As I said, not professional video or cinematographer. We're literally just showing what we're doing. So essentially we go around the whole thing, and create that dust effect, and it works really well. So if we move to the top of the hole, so I've done kind of up to here, so we're going to do this bit here, around the rust. The rust is all dry now with the pigments, so again a little bit of Zandri dust like so, and essentially just run your brush over, and the texture of the pigments and the typhus corrosion that we put on before we painted will naturally pick up or create high spots that will pick up this Zandri dust as we go around, and give us quite a subtle effect really, which is what we're after. And there we go. So that's created exactly what we want. And this is a good time. You can see a little fibre, which whether that's from a cotton bud or whatever. But when you're getting in this close to do this kind of dusty effect, and the weather in it gives you a real opportunity to get nice and close to the model and notice these things. So as you can see, it's picked up the high spots. As I say, it's a little more vivid on camera than it is to my eye, but yeah, I'm kind of liking the way it's looking, this kind of urban dusty effect, and well used. So I'm going to go around and make sure that's all done, all the dust effect is on, and then we're going to come back, and around the exhaust here we're just going to add some sort of blackening. I'll show you how I'm going to do that using UMP pigments essentially. So we'll get this done, yeah, and then we're going to come back. So I'll get this under dust on, see you in a minute. Okay, so I've got all the dust effects on the hull that I was after really, and that's looking exactly where we sort of want it at this stage. So I'm going to put some soot marks around the exhaust. So the way I'm going to do this, very similar to how I use the pigments to do the rust, but this time we're going to be using Citadel Northern Oil. Give that a good shake, and we're just going to dab this around the exhaust here, like so. I'm going to go sort of maybe, I don't know, halfway up the exhaust shroud really. Super. Just wipe your brush off, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go in with Citadel black pigment. Citadel Ultimate Modeling Products black pigment, and the Citadel Northern Oil will hold that pigment in place and act as like a fixer, a binder, whatever you want to call it, like so. There we go, and it is as simple as that. It took, you know, not long at all. And you want a bit of texture to it because the soot and exhaust fume staining wouldn't be completely smooth, so a bit of texture is fine, but not too much. More texture on the inside, like so, and underneath, and there we go. So wipe that brush off because pigments are notoriously messy. Yeah, so you can see that kind of soot effect. Now once that's dry, once that's, get rid of that pigment. I mean, this green cardboard now is knackered, but that's fine. These are pennies really, so they get replaced with every build. I've given up trying to keep it clean doing this stage. It's very messy. But yeah, once that's dry, we'll then go in with like a dark grey colour and just pick out the edges. You can even go in with a pencil and outline to get some metallics and all that sort of stuff around the exhaust. But for now, that's kind of the basis of the exhaust staining. So that will dry with a little bit of texture, job done. So all that remains to do really at this stage now is paint these mud flaps at the back, carry on with a bit of dust effects and stuff on those once they're painted, and then put it all together. So road wheels, tracks, turret, put it all together and see how it looks once it's all back together, and then we'll make a decision whether we're going to stop there with the weathering, or whether we need to do a bit more in certain areas. So yeah, that's it for now. I'll come back once it's all back together and we'll have a look at it and see if there's any areas that we need to sort of concentrate on before we start working on stowage really. So yeah, I'll be back, see you in a minute. Okay, so there we go. We are all weathered. We're all together. The turret is now in place with some little bits of stowage. Tracks are on. We're all done. And I think we're looking pretty much where we want to be at this stage. So obviously I have added some stowage. So the ammo boxes for the Dushka are from the kit. And then these sort of tart rolls here in various colors, they're scratch built. So in the next video we're going to concentrate on the stowage, and I'll show you how I'm doing this, because there's a lot more stowage to add to get it to where we want it. The only other thing we've added is the tow cable here, the steel tow cable. We just need to paint the bracket here and weather that the same as the rest of the hull of the tank, and I'll show you how I've done this using the nylon thread that comes in the kit. But for now, the weathering is pretty much there. So yeah, we're kind of looking how we want to look. Very used, very battered, but still very much operational. So that's it. That's the weathering stage done for now. What we'll be moving on to in the next video is we're going to be looking at the stowage, how we're scratch building stowage, how we're doing the tow cables, and all that sort of stuff. Stowage is a challenge with this particular build because it's not that traditional military stowage. So we're using some bits from the mini art kit, the street furniture, and then these sort of tart rolls and stuff we are scratch building. I'll show you exactly how I'm doing it with the rope and everything else. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think, how it's looking so far. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Do you like the techniques that have been used, etc., etc.? Let me know. Don't forget to go and visit umpretail.com and emodels.co.uk, and also Black Rifle Model Worx Facebook group. And if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe, and the bell notification, and then you will get notified when the next videos in this series are released. So as I say, next one's stowage. After that, we're going to be moving on to doing a base, and then we're coming to the end of the build, really. So until next time, guys, stay safe, happy hobbying.